of CCP Podcasting Productions. Welcome to Behind the Curtain Live. It is a Thursday night. I'm Chris Page. We've got John Cable to the left, Todrick Ramsey to the right. And what a better way to start off this spotlight than by really looking at what I felt was, I think it's hilarious the way the reactions went. Jim Cornette is the topic of discussion tonight, and what better way to start than with Dairy Queen? Am I right, John? What's happening, brother? How you doing? Bong rip sound effect. That's awesome. Toddy, what's happening? How are you doing this evening?
I am doing well. Tired, but I'm here.
Well, this is not the first time that we have done a program on Jim Cornette. We have done a spotlight on Cornette before, and I never aired it because we were talking about doing the live streams, and we talked about bringing this particular program to the live streams. So I figured we would just redo it and do it live, and maybe, just maybe, pass along a little quality entertainment in the process. Are you guys ready to rock and roll?
I am always ready.
So before we get started, hold on. Before we get started, I displayed it on the tape show, so I'm gonna display it here on the live one. I don't know if you guys can see that. You know, Todrick displayed the infamous Ivory autograph, so I figured I'd throw out the Cornette with the caption of "Fuck Russo." Um, so this guy right here, Jim Cornette, is arguably a legend in professional wrestling, a managerial figure. Has really, the Midnight Express, the fucking goddamn, I'm forgetting the name right now off the top of my head. The Heavenly Bodies. Yokozuna, Owen and the Bulldog. I mean, this guy, he's managed. It's a list of who's who. His contributions to professional wrestling stand on their own, and I'm excited to get started. So it's all you now, Toddy. Take it away.
Well, so Cornette has been doing this for like the majority of his life. He started when he was 14. He was a photographer. He was a ring announcer, timekeeper. He did public relations, and when he was doing all this, he met Christine Jarrett, and she is the mother of Jerry Jarrett um, from Continental Wrestling Association. 14. What do you think about that? I don't even remember what I was doing when I was 14.
Cornette, like when you hear people say that like they grew up in the business, Cornette truly grew up in the business.
Mm-hmm.
He got a start uh, just at that age, right? Like I know that he was doing a lot of photography work when he got started in his earlier years, and really and truly, the sky was the limit at an early age to be involved in the product. That shows a lot of trust, right? Because this is back when kayfabe was a thing, and you can't just trust anybody. So I mean, I really think that his mind for the business started so young, and it only helped him throughout his entire career. What are you thinking?
Mm-hmm.
You're muted apparently, bud. You're not muted here. I hear you.
I hear you.
What about that? How about now? Check, 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 Mikey, check, check. No audio, fam. No. There's got to be audio now. Right? There we
We
go.
go.
They can hear.
Awesome. Bet. Production's on me, guys. When we go live, I'm the one with the buttons. So go figure. There's always going to be issues. Anyway, it's like I was saying, at 14, I definitely was not embarking on a journey into an industry that I was gonna mark as my own and have long-standing legends told about me, such as we saw before we started today. The fact that he's been able to do as much in the industry as he's done, and the way that he's come up in the business, and the way that he's really put his finger in every aspect of what wrestling is and what it was, and we still see his thumbprints and what it's going to be. The fact that he had the opportunity to do that, I think, is amazing. I think that he's one of the finer examples of someone who pursued a passion and ran with it to the finish line.
Well,
Yeah, I know. I mean, you got to think this guy. He started so young, which is what makes part of these earlier success stories that much more impressive to me. Because as we'll talk about, this guy made a shit ton of money by the time he was 24 years old.
yes, he did.
So let's go. Let's get started, Todrick.
All right, picture it. Continental Wrestling Association, Memphis, 1982. Cornette, he's writing programs for arena shows. He's getting pictures published in magazines. He goes to Memphis and he wants to see a match between Jerry Lawler and Ric Flair. And after that show was over, he was offered on television a wrestling manager role by Jerry Jarrett. And he, before he comes in, he decides to adopt the name James E. Cornette. He was paying tribute to James E. Barnett, and he made his debut in September of that year, and he managed Sherry Martel, who later on became a manager. So that's already a big name. We all know what Sherry Martel has done in this business.
I think that you should put a little more respect on the fact that he got to manage Sherry Martel. You're like, and then she became a manager. It's like, whoa, 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 calm down.
I've got a Sherry
She's
Martel
not Ivory, but geez.
First of all, you're reading too much into that. I was swallowing and trying to keep talking, but thank you for that.
Oh, you were what?
You were what?
Sorry.
No.
So my Sherry Martel story, sensational Sherry, which we're going to do a spotlight on her at some point. Like, let's just be fair, that's going to happen. She is such a sweetheart. Before I moved down to Florida, when I was working in Indies in Alabama, I was on a show with the Rock and Roll Express. When I say on a show, I was kind of ring crewing it that night. The main event was Rock and Roll Express versus fucking goddamn, I don't remember. Oh man, Sherry was managing the heel team. So the Rock and Roll Express cheated to pull the win, and this is an outdoor venue. It's at a fairgrounds. There's probably 1,000 people there. This is before I had gotten trained, so like I was 17, and I jumped up on the ring apron, taking Sherry's side. Man, she stopped Robert Gibson from punching me in the face. It was ridiculous, but she is such a sweetheart. And to see Cornette rubbing elbows with her initially, I mean, just kind of sets the standard and sets the pace for what's to come, right? Like you start out with I think that might have been before Sherry kind of blew up. Look at what Sherry became. Even and if I'm mistaken, and she was a made star at that point, then that's even fucking better.
So he's managing her, and then he has this gimmick where he's like a rich kid, and he's a really inept manager. So like after a match, his clients keep firing him, and that went on for a little while. And then over the next 14 months, let's talk about some of the names that he managed. Jesse Barr, Exotic Adrian Street. He had a trio called the Cornette Dynasty that had Carl Fergie, Norman Frederick Charles III, and Angel Frank Morrell. So he did all this while he was in Memphis. Then he went to Georgia, because Jarrett had a deal with Ole Anderson, but he came back to Memphis back in '93, and he worked as a co-manager with Jimmy Hart, and that's going to wrap up his time with Continental Wrestling Association. So before we move on, what are your thoughts on some of those names that I mentioned?
On, you want to go first?
I mean, if you look at the list of the people that he had influence with early on in his career, you would imagine that he's probably in the Hall of Fame. Because the list of people that should be in the Hall of Fame that have been associated with him is legendary long.
Yeah, I'm good with that. The only name that I can think of off the top of my head that struck a chord was Adrian Street.
Hmm.
Isn't that who you said?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the only one that I can think of off the top of my head that resonates with me. But it sets the foundation. You're Green. He's a new guy, new to the managing side of the equation. But obviously, he had personality, or else he wouldn't have been on television. In Memphis, no less, in '83, because they're booming as far as television. They're selling out every Monday night, and at the Memphis Coliseum. So it just lays the foundation for more stuff to come, and really heightens his character as he's honing in on who James E. Cornette is.
Right. So now we're around November of '83. He's with Mid South Wrestling, and this is when the Midnight Express was formed. Um, I know that you're excited because you like the Midnight Express.
Oh, I fucking love the Midnight Express. It's one of the greatest
Nope.
tag teams of all time. Both incarnations.
Nope.
Condrey and Eaton and Stan Lane.
Oh,
I am
do
I
I?
am that
Oh, I heard some dissension from the other end of the screen.
Oh, it was no dissension. It was just I wasn't going to say the jokes that I had.
Oh,
he showed restraint. Oh, John.
A round of
Good
applause,
job,
right?
buddy. Dennis Condrey is his name that you might be familiar with him, you might not. He was a tremendous talent in the Southern Territories back in the day. And to put them together, to put Bobby and Dennis together with Jim Cornette as the mouthpiece. I mean, I don't think anyone quite expected how big they were going to get as a tag team and as a trio. But goddamn, did they not? They're off to the races. And the pairing of Condrey and Eaton, they complemented each other so well as wrestlers. Neither one of them were really big body guys.
hmm.
And as far as Bobby Eaton is concerned, he's got one of the best right hands in the business. And if anybody wants to dispute me on that, DMs are open.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. It was Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton. They formed the new team. Right around that time, that's also when Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson were the Rock and Roll Express. But um, Bill Watts he realized that his business was down at the time. So he needed to revamp it. And so this is why he's called out people to make suggestions on like what he can do differently. And that those formation of those teams, that was what helped facilitate. And he saw Cornette and he wanted him in there. And I wrote down two direct quotes. He says, he was so obnoxious, I wanted to slap him. And then he said, I knew he was instant box office if he could get me that riled up. So uh, Cornette always, always found a way to make himself relevant, and he always found a way where he was needed. What do you think?
I think
Where do you
Jim
think?
Cornette. I think Cornette is a heel and as a talker, one of the best. Legitimately one of the best. Um, if you can possess the power to take a microphone and stand in the middle of the ring and make people want to jump the rail and riot, if you
Mm-hmm.
have that capability and you can hold them in the palm of your hands, it means you're the man, and Cornette, what with the pairing, when any of his managerial stuff, right? Here's another piece of why, one reason why I love Jim Cornette is because, while managers nowadays are pretty much non-fucking existent, he
Mm-hmm.
did not take away from his teams.
Mm-mm.
Right? Like, he played his role, did what he needed to do. But at the end of the day, the shine was on whoever he was managing, whether it be the Midnights, whether it be the Heavenly Bodies, whether it be Yokozuna or whoever. It was never necessarily about Cornette. He just played his role. And that's what makes, to me, what makes a really good manager is your job is to get over your team. And why Cornette was placed with them is because he was good on the microphone. He could carry a promo. He could carry the segment. If you watch some of the old Midnight promos, the Midnights don't do a whole lot of talking. Like, Cornette sets them up, and then they knock it down, and Cornette ties a bow, and you're out the door. That on the microphone, that is gold. And when it came to the actual physicality, he's not afraid to take a bump. If it meant that it enhanced the overall product of the match, he did it. John, what say you?
So, like you were saying, the ability to control a crowd as a heel or as a face. If you look at like who are the most iconic wrestlers in the business ever, right? There are none of the people that you'll list aren't of this caliber where either a face or a heel, they don't run a crowd. Legends run crowds. That's the telltale skill of a legend. You don't get to that status without being able to control an entire crowd. And Cornette was one of the best. Like you said, if a heel can just show up at the curtain and get the entire place ready to just tear up, then you've done your job as a heel. That's the only thing you're supposed to do, is to piss everybody off with your mere existence. Look at Sonya Benson. Everybody hates the bitch. But here we are. We're all talking about her every time we do a Brawl Talk because she is hot fucking television. But now you see from the same thing, like, this kid grew up in a ring with a passion for this industry, was not afraid to do whatever it took to make the show go. And that's why all of his endeavors are so successful. He never gave a damn about himself being famous. All he wanted to do was promote wrestling as an industry and make it work. And you could see it in everything he fucking touched.
Super facts.
So about this time, he starts carrying a tennis racket, and he loaded the racket with a horseshoe, and it was supposed to guard against aggressive fans. We have seen him with his famous tennis racket. I don't know if he's going to have it in our watch along later, but that tennis racket it's hilarious.
We'll talk about iconic.
So, like, so when you think about it, and you have to put yourself in the '80s, in the early to mid '80s specifically, like reps and grunges and well, no, the greasers were like '50s and '60s.
Oh, they were still around.
Well, I mean, you have all these different genres of people, and Cornette, the tennis racket was kind of the icing on the cake, right? Like, of the pretentious, arrogant, better than you, the racket was just where it was at, and nobody else was doing it. Like, there's a lot of gimmicks that are out there. Cornette picked one that no one else had, no one else was doing. It's just something that added to his overall presentation, and it also served as a nice little trusty weapon if need be, because again, back in those days, they would get so much heat that fans would either riot or try and follow them and wait for them outside in the parking lot, or they would be approached in gas stations or public places. Like, yeah, you got to have something to protect yourself, because as we know, society today, people get offended by everything. I mean, I don't think I make it through a day where I don't offend somebody, and it's not intentional. I just
Sometimes.
I'm who I am. Um, but the tennis racket, yeah, that was, and it was a staple. It stayed with him.
For a long time, yeah.
We got anything to add, John?
No, I think we've covered that pretty well. I think, you know, just realistically as a character, he figured out a way to really hit home what his job was, and he did it better than anybody else I know of.
Did.
Well, he takes his team. They're on television for a few weeks, and then they immediately start feuding with the tag team champions, Magnum TA and Mr. Wrestling the Second. At one of the television tapings, they even tarred and feathered them during an interview. Um, the feud, it continued for a couple of weeks, and then they ended up winning those tag team championships because at that time, Mr. Wrestling walked out on his partner during a match. So first, right out the gate, we're already here, tag team champions. That shows that that was a good team, and a lot of that success they had was directly because of Cornette. Um, what say you?
Well, I think it shows with any territory, right? Like or major territory. If you're putting the straps on somebody pretty quick, then you got plans. Either that or scrambling, one or the other. And in this case, it's they have plans. Um, Seeing Condrey and Eaton pick up the belt so early was a great. It's great because to me, again, I'll put either incarnation of the Midnights up against anybody, and having that debate all day, every day. For them to get the straps, like I said, and get them so early, you got plans, and they didn't disappoint.
Yeah, John.
I boy, with your chat, you
I don't know what he's talking about.
a 25-year-old my ass.
Someone is angry spice tonight.
Times two.
Yeah, I know, right?
Mm-mm. I refuse to accept times two. That is incorrect.
Well, let's get on. Let's get on with it.
All right. So this takes us to the last Stampede. They're having a celebration in the ring. There's a cake, and we all know that when there's cake in the wrestling business, things do not end up well.
That depends
Cornette
on your
had his back
definition of
turned.
well.
I have never seen a cake go well. I mean, someone's
I
always
mean,
going to end up wearing said
well, yeah,
cake.
but if you're the cleaning company, that's the best case scenario.
Facts. Rock and Roll Express, they come in and they shove his face in the cake, and boy, did that make him mad. He it leads to a heated altercation, and Watts ends up slapping Cornette during that. And next couple of weeks, the Midnight Express and Cornette they attack him and leave him bloody, and Watts comes back out of retirement, and they have a series of matches that they call the Last Stampede, and Watts had a masked teammate, Stagger Lee. They thought it was the Junkyard Dog that was under that mask. They faced the Midnight Express and Cornette all throughout the territory. The stipulations were if the Midnights won, Cornette would run Mid-South Wrestling for 60 days. If they lost, he would be stripped down and forced to wear either a diaper or a dress, depending on the venue. This particular series shattered box office records, and so Bill Gates got exactly what he was looking for when it came to ratings for Mid-South.
The run of territories. So again, this is before Vince is buying out television trying to buy promotions. You're making names for yourselves by going from territory to territory. At that time, cable was not necessarily a big thing, but what you would get in, Alabama, you're not going to get in New York unless your signal is boosted. So like they're all over the place. Um, nope. Uh, they're all over the place trying to make this thing work, and they do, right? Uh, the stuff with the rock and roll, as you'll see, if they start here in Mid South, they took that act to several places, several territories, and that's kind of what you did. Like on the independent circuit now, I mean, it's been this way on the indie since I was in the industry. But if you come across somebody and you put together a program and it draws some money, well, let's take this. Let's see if we can get booked elsewhere and do the same thing there. Like you make your name on the independent circuit the same way you would do in the territories, and that's exactly what they did here. And for Cornette to break ratings and break box office or be a part of that, like just to have a small role in that at such a young age, you can't ask for better experience. You can't buy better experience. John, what do you think?
No, I think that's entirely right. You know, when I was working with indies here, we would have the same show for, I don't know, a few weeks, because we would never see the same crowd twice. So we would run, we go to this city and do this show, and then we go to the next city and do the show, and we go to the next city and do the show. And it was the same show just over the course of a month or two. And then, we get back around the circuit, we'd have to move on to the next part of the stories and go into what happened after the last time you saw us. And that's the same way that, before national television was a thing. It's the exact same thing. They had these stories that they told, but they told them over much longer periods of time because they wanted to get in front of as many crowds with it as they could.
That's true. So we've seen some of what he can do, but in case you were wondering how he got there, his big influence. If you've ever watched interviews and they ask him, Bill Watts, he took his philosophy about having believable and credible wrestling, and kayfabe was a serious. Nope, not even gonna touch it. Not gonna touch it.
In that era, though, kayfabe was a serious endeavor, and those guys realistically, like, man, you say the wrong shit in an interview and watch one of these old boys bust the shit out of an interviewer. Like, that's happened
Right.
a
Look
number
at
of
what
occasions.
was it? God damn. Who was it? It was Dave Schultz, Dr. David Schultz.
Yeah,
And
shit,
y'all
yeah.
was
Schultz
wrestling
hated
fake.
interviewers.
Hey, slap the shit out of the dude. Is that fake? Does that feel fake to you? Like just slap him to the fucking ground.
He's not the only one either. There were a ton of guys from that era that, like, they did not want to hear about you breaking kayfabe. That was a sin to them as far as their stage was concerned, and that was all that mattered.
Well, he definitely had a really rough travel schedule, but Watts, he he admired him because he was able to attract TV ratings, like big TV ratings. He was always selling out arenas in like lowly populated areas, and he really thought of him as a genius. Um, so earlier, Chris talked about the money that he was making. So another thing that was a direct quote from him. He says, 2 weeks of our lives, we did 1 hour TV shows, 15 house shows, 2 all-day promo sets, drove 4,700 miles in a car. And while doing that, and I can't speak for anybody else, but I was only 22 years old, pleased as punch to be there, 5,600 in 2 weeks. And this is 1984. So imagine how much money that was back then
It was a
for a 22
shitload.
year old.
It was a shitload. And, realistically, I did the same kind of trips week in and week out for years and didn't make anywhere near the money, and I wouldn't trade it for a fucking second. It was awesome. The road trips were amazing. I probably paid out more than I made the whole time, but we didn't give a shit. We were having a blast on the road doing shows, and we did not care.
I think that at that point in time, to be again so young and in an industry that isn't overly accepting of opening its arms to welcome people in to come into a top spot in territory specifically. Cornette was brought in and had a pretty good spot in Memphis and into Georgia and back to Memphis. Now we're down into we're here with Bill Watts and Bill Watts, for everything that can be said about him, and there's a lot of negative things can be said. The one positive thing that can be said is the dude knew how to read a crowd,
Oh,
and
yeah.
did and how he did to be able to learn even for a year or so from all these different promoters at the time. You had Jerry Jarrett in Memphis. I forgot. I don't know who was in over Georgia. Ole Anderson. Ole Anderson in Georgia. Now you're working with Bill Watts. Look at these names. Those are three outside of Ole. At least Jerry and Bill Watts are two top tier promoters.
Mm-hmm.
You're being able to learn different aspects. Oh, and let's not forget that not only Jerry, you were working with Jerry's wife previously as well.
Mm-hmm.
All these different people. Yeah, let's move
Well,
on.
so the Midnight Express had a very short stint with World Class Championship Wrestling. They get there, they feuded with the Fantastics. That was Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers. But the opportunities in that company really weren't going anywhere. Um, they wanted to feud with the Von Erichs because that would have been main event money. Um, that did not come to fruition. So uh, they came and they went. Um,
Yeah,
I don't think we need to.
there's not a whole lot there. That was a cup of coffee. They tried. They wanted to make some money. Fritz obviously is pushing his kids, and rightfully so, because they were drawing and doing their thing. But yeah, no. But I know from interviews in the past, I've heard Corney talk about it. It was here today, gone tomorrow. Didn't like it. Here's our notice. We're going back to Jim Crockett.
Mm-hmm. So we're in 85 now. And as Chris just said, they're with Jim Crockett Promotions and World Championship Wrestling. They spent 5 years there, so they must have found something that they liked. Um, Cornette, he managed a team there, the NWA World Tag Team Champions, excuse me. And that was Conjuring Eaton for 6 months, and then Eaton and Lane later on for a few weeks. While they were there, they were three-time United States Tag Team Champions, and Cornette still had his loud mouth. He still had his tennis racket, but he often ensured that his wrestlers won the match, and that was because everyone always assumed that his racket case was loaded, and he was a heel manager, and so he was always yelling at the fans. He was, excuse me, he was annoying when they got beaten or humiliated, and the Midnights were hated there, so bad that they were escorted by the police to and from the ring at house shows, and police would escort them to city limits just to make sure that crazed fans did not attack them.
Shit that I was talking about earlier. This is when territories were real, man. Like these fans didn't play around. And at this point in time, they're working with the Rock and Roll. They're working with the Fantastics. They're working with the Freebirds, I believe, a little bit. They're working with all these different teams and getting opportunities to make some things happen. I don't know when exactly Condrey exits and Stan Lane comes in. Um, it's that John. You correct me if I'm wrong. That those list of tag teams it's a who's who.
It's not just the tag. It's literally everybody that he had impact with early on into the early '90s, even, and the tag teams especially. If you look at the people that he's been, associated with over the years, like it's a ridiculous amount of fucking talent, and all of those people that were involved in those early days, they were all involved in the industry in a way where they've actually like influenced wrestling. All of those names have people that look up to them. They have these legendary careers. Everyone involved with Jim Cornette in some form or fashion, if they stick around him long enough to let him get them where they're going, they all are famous.
Well,
Where we going next, Toddy?
we're going to the scaffold injury. I know you like that one. You want to
I'm
talk about it?
free falling. So let's talk about this for a second. Was this this is Cornette? Is this the Road Warriors?
Yep, the Road Warriors. They're at Starcade in '86.
Skywalkers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always planned for Cornette to try and take a bump. John needs to chat on his own name then, and not on my name, if you don't want to be misconstrued as me. Let's try that. The Skywalkers. Let me get back to it. Just saying. Get Cornette on top of the scaffolding, and the story has always been told, and as I've heard by Ramsey, not Ramsey, Jesus Christ, but told by Cornette, that he's Big Bubba Rogers is with him, who's now the big, formerly, Big Bubba Rogers later would become the Big Boss Man and had that big run with Hogan. You have Cornette, on top. Bubba says, "Well, I'm gonna catch you, Jim." He said, "No, you're not." He's like, "No, I'm gonna catch. You're gonna fall. I'm gonna catch you." Didn't catch him, and it was a horrific fucking injury. But here's the kicking part. Dude missed 2 weeks of TV, and that's it. And this is after having his knee surgically repaired. He shows up on crutch. Maybe not even 2 weeks. It may have been a week or something like that. Like, it was not a long period of time for an injury like that. And did not bat an eyelash. You want to talk about some respect for the business and the industry to get back out on the road. And continue to try and contribute to your product when you could have easily taken off 4 to 8 weeks and probably still gotten a little bit of what you were getting paid. Probably not a lot, but you've gotten something. No, that's not Cornette. Cornette put on his fucking working shoes and went to goddamn work because that's what he did. Constant professional. John, you're nodding. What say you?
No, I completely agree. The fact that he did not lay down when he could have and, just collect an easy check. He had shit to do, and he was not afraid to get out there and do it. Always.
Well, we are winding down with his time there. In '89, he becomes a color commentator. He is also doing broadcasts on TBS with Jim Ross. He also became a booker for the creative team until he got into it with Jim Hurd, and then he quits the company in 1990.
Fucking Jim Hurd. Oh God, Mr. Pizza Hut, I believe, and wanted Ric Flair to cut his hair and put an earring in his ear and call him Spartacus. That guy, yeah, he didn't know shit about professional wrestling. And had no
Please tell me that
business.
was a joke.
What's that?
What you just said about Ric Flair.
No, I'm dead serious.
There was a promoter that was stupid.
There was a
He was the
promoter,
head.
Jim
He was
Hurd,
the head of WCW
the head
at the
of
time.
WCW, wanted Flair to cut his hair, put an earring in it, and wanted to call him Spartacus. I'm dead serious. This is a real thing. Um, of course, Flair said no, and Hurd ran off Cornette, and then not too long after that, he ran off Flair. Flair said "fuck you," and went to the WWF.
Yeah, I would
Refused. I
have
mean,
too. That's
that guy was a
ridiculous.
fucking shitbag and a half. I mean, one of the worst things that could happen to that company. Only to be followed by Bill Watts, who did not have a good run either. Um, I'm with it. Where are we at? Where are we going?
So he leaves in 90. He comes back very briefly in 93. He was part of a talent trade with Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And Bill Watts, as you just said, he had brought the Rock and Roll Express back into that company. And he billed them as the Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions, which really pissed Cornette off because at that time, he was managing the Heavenly Bodies, Stanley and Tom Pritchard, and they were the actual reigning champions. So the two get into a heated confrontation during an interview. Bill Watts comes out and he suggests that the Body should wrestle the Express. Cornette wasn't too pleased about that because he said they weren't dressed for it. But the match happens anyway, and the Express wins that match by DQ because Eaton interfered in the match. After that, Cornette puts his tennis racket over the head of Morton, and Eaton delivers the Alabama Jam. And Cornette strikes the referee, and he helps his men beat up the Express. So that's where we are right now. What do y'all think about that? That's a little bit to unpack there.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, when Cornette opened Smoky Mountain, John, let me come over to you, man. Like, I've talked a fucking lot so far. Let me come over to you, and let's chat about the importance of, first of all, making the move and having the capital to start your own territory.
Well, we all know that getting any kind of a Fed off the ground is an investment, not just in time but in money. Even if you aren't spending big on talent or spending big on venue it still costs a lot of money to get the equipment and get the ring and the lights and the everything that goes into putting a show together. It's all money. And in that day and age, when wrestling was not in the mainstream like it is now or like it went into later, for Cornette to decide, hey, I'm going to start a territory. Even though the territories are no longer a thing, I'm going to do it and show you how it should have been done in the first place. And here it is. And he did. After the territory wars, he built his own fucking territory right in the middle of the country and did things with it that no other promoter, even in the territory wars, could have done.
I mean, he was really smart with things, right? Like, starting from the top, Smoky Mountain, he made sure that he planned and executed everything meticulously, from the crowning of the first world champion through how he ran the day-to-day operations to
and
the talent that he had come through.
Right, his navigation with the other companies and the routes that he set into the WWF and the WCW and all of the places that were still doing territories. The amount of talent that he could literally pull from thin air that had national recognition for being on the big shows was fucking astounding. He could just pull giant names out of nowhere and put them on a show and have fans from all over the place come to watch it happen.
I mean, think about some of the names that he had come through there, just real quick. And I mean, because Smoky Mountain, in and of its own, is its own show. Over on the YouTube channel. We did John, I think you and I did a behind the curtain territory on it, and
Mhm.
I mean it literally, from the earlier days of having Bob Armstrong to Chris Candido, Chris Jericho and Lance Storm came through in the later years. Dr. Tom Pritchard, uh, what is his name? Del Rey, can't remember his first name. Um, Brian Adams or yeah, Brian Adams, I know who it was. Just there's so fucking many. The dude that played T.L. Hopper was Dirty White Boy. Jake the Snake Roberts had a stint there. Arn Anderson, who is on the watch along, folks, that we're going to be picking out here shortly, uh, came in and did a match or two. It's literally this. It's even something that's more impressive. Jim Cornette was the only guy to run a territory that had a working relationship with WCW and the WWF in the same calendar year. Think about that. I mean, bro, and bro, I don't know if it gets, that much sweeter as a promoter to have, business done with both major companies and get some spotlight and some shine, getting your belts on national television within both promotions and both companies. I mean, goddamn. He worked a sweet fucking deal, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
All the years in the business have paid
Well,
off for him.
no, go ahead, John.
No, I was just saying, like, for the amount of time that he's been in the business and the amount of things that he's seen happen in offices and the amount of times that he's been in, the upper end of management and seeing exactly what happens, it gives him a really wide acumen to see for himself and to kind of predict what's going to happen. Like you said earlier, he knows how to read a crowd. He's got his finger on the pulse of the industry, really. And he does know shit. Maybe not everybody likes him or agrees with him, or maybe he doesn't miss on, maybe he doesn't always not miss. Maybe there are occasions when things that he's done and said have not been entirely 100% up and up. And realistically, everybody makes mistakes. But for the most part, he's known exactly what to do to make the business work. And he did it the whole time he was running his company. And he even knew when to get out and dropped it just in time.
Yeah, yeah. He definitely knew the writing was on the wall in '95, and he was already working with WWF because the territories, everything had just changed when it comes to U.S. wrestling about that time. So in '95, he closed the doors and he sold all the rights to WWF. Um, he said he felt like the business was, as a whole, was in a recession.
And he wasn't wrong. It was in the recession the entire time he was running it successfully.
Sure. I mean, he was a success story, if you ask me, in regards to Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He had television. He ran it like it was a territory. I mean, for his big shows, he would have people from the WWF come in. The Undertaker, as an example, Glenn Jacobs, Kane, was there as the Unabomber. So the Unabomber and the Undertaker worked matches well before there was a Kane in Smoky Mountain. He was finding opponents for the top guys, and he did a tremendous job doing it. So it was no shock, and it was no secret, or no shock to me when I saw him pop up on WWF television. And not only do on air stuff, but really and truly the contributions behind the camera,
Hmm.
working on creative and not necessarily agreeing with shit stain in the later years, but it's good shit.
Well, I think this is the perfect time to close out WCW. And we're in 1993, and let's talk about the World Wrestling Federation. Um, so you got to remember, though, at this time, he still hadn't closed Smoky Mountain Wrestling. That was in '95, but he's doing both jobs at the same time. Um, while he's there, he's a manager, he's a color commentator, he helps book matches, but he's also the spokesperson for their champion, Yokozuna, at this time. And I know that's a name that everybody recognizes. So right off the bat, you come in, you're doing all these things, and they put you with the top guy in the company at that time. John,
I
let's start with
still
you.
I still contest that without Jim Cornette, Yokozuna isn't the top guy in the company. Period.
No, I'm going to disagree with you on that because
You
who's
can
going to be the
disagree
top
all
guy
you want.
regardless?
Without Jim
I'm about to give you whatever.
Cornette being the mouthpiece that he was, the whole gimmick would not have come off the way it did. I will always credit Yokozuna's success with Jim Cornette being the character that he is.
I do know that Yoko was a 2-time world heavyweight champion before Jim Cornette was even in the picture.
Yeah, you
right?
can have belts, but the character, the gimmick, the story did not get to the popularity it did without
I'm going
Jim
to put
Cornette.
over Cornette. I'm going to put over Cornette and say this to the American audience: he did a tremendous job.
That part.
Is he completely responsible for Yokozuna's success? We'll agree to disagree. Is he responsible for maybe the longevity? I can say maybe, because when he did come in, it was instant heat, and it was stuff. He was connecting where Mr. Fuji as a manager was not. And that's no disrespect to Mr. Fuji by any means. He is a legend and a Hall of Famer in his own right. But he wasn't translating to an American audience, whereas Cornette could definitely translate to the
Instantaneously.
American audience. And his work up until that point for the last decade kind of sets him up, right? Like he can say beyond any shadow of a doubt, I drew money in every major territory, so I can draw money here. If it comes
And he wasn't
down to
wrong.
it, right?
It was
No,
absolutely
he wasn't.
correct.
Vader, another talent that Cornette managed for a hot little minute. It just there's so much with Cornette, and the jump to Yoko, it was a smart move, and he did do what he needed to do, and that was get the heat on the for the American portion of the audience. Personally, that's what I feel.
Well, you are right, because right about this time, he leads a stable of heel wrestlers, and they are called Camp Cornette. So the people that were in this was Yokozuna, Manitar, Vader, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog. He also managed Tom Pritchard and Jimmy Del Rey while they were briefly there in the WWF. And those are some top names, names that are recognizable to anybody. While he's there, he's on the announce team, commentary again, and then he starts doing a bunch of controversial work shoots where he praised what he felt was right and he condemned what he felt was wrong in professional wrestling. Cornette often gave praise to WCW, even though he was in the WWF, the wrestlers that he felt deserved it. And he was active behind the scenes with booking matches all the way up until he frequently butted heads with what'd you call him?
Thing.
Spitstain, Vince Russo.
Thing.
I just thought about Peter Griffin every time somebody said Meg's name, and he would make that noise.
This thing.
Well, what do you think about that? What do you think about Camp Cornette and these work shoots that he was doing that were clearly controversial?
Good, John.
I mean, realistically, I think it was genius. He, like we've said several times in this show already, he knows what the industry wants to see. He's got his finger in the crowd. He knows. He can read them. And if you wanted to stir the pot and make shit go crazy, that's your guy. He'll figure it out real fast.
I think Camp Cornette, while it served its purpose, as far as being the heel faction, I think his contributions were better, bigger, and better behind the scenes at the time. Now, around this time, WCW is starting to shift to more real based stories. We're not quite there to the NWO, but we're getting there. And the tension between Cornette and Vince Russo. Now, I wasn't there. I was never in the room, and I'm not a fucking expert. But the tension between those cats, based on interviews that I've listened to, that was real. And I can remember one interview specifically. They were talking about a Monday Night Raw had 7 disqualifications. Wait, no, like 2 countouts and like 6 disqualifications and 1 clean finish on the entire show.
Oof.
So like Cornette would say, "Hey, we need to. This isn't gonna work. We're gonna kill the town.
That's- Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna kill the product too, right? No, nobody's gonna care about the finish. No, that's
No, that's
I would
incorrect.
say that's incorrect. So ultimately, I side with Cornette on the whole Russo side of that equation because I'm more of a wrestling purist. I really enjoy the old school style of wrestling over the new school style. I think most stuff nowadays is way too fucking dangerous. And I just hope that these young kids and that are out here jumping off of ladders and shattering their fucking feet are making more than $100,000 a year. I hope that's happening because that's not you're being remembered for the wrong reasons. And so I can definitely get with the older school style and the older school mentality. So I'm a Cornette guy on that side of the coin. I mean, for fuck's sake, I got him to sign the picture. Fuck Russo.
I bet that was extremely hard to do.
Oh, it's the best $10 I ever spent.
Yeah. So he parts ways because he doesn't get along with Russo. He also doesn't get along with that producer Kevin Dunn at the time. But he starts doing. Well, okay, I was gonna skip it, but it is kind of funny. One notable thing that happened with them about that time, there was a guy named the Patriot, and Cornette wanted to push him as like the over the top, like good guy character. And Kevin Dunn looks him in his face and says he found him tiresome, which led Cornette to make fun of his buck teeth and threaten to physically assault him. And he did have to apologize, but he parted ways.
That was not what he said. That was not what he said.
Listen.
What did he say? John, what did he say?
I know it wasn't that.
What did he say?
It wasn't that.
Tell me.
Don't make me look it up.
Tell me. I think our viewers deserve to know. If it was a legitimate statement, then they deserve to know. Am I wrong?
Oh,
No.
shit. What was dude's name?
Kevin Dunn.
If one of you guys just want to text me what he said,
No, I'll say it. I'll look it up. But I know for a fact that was not.
If anybody's going to get sued on this show, it should be me. But so if there's any kind of things that we need to be concerned about.
Well, while John's looking that up, so he leaves, and he starts doing some invasion type stuff. He shows up on ECW. He attacks Tommy Dreamer with his tennis racket because they were doing a WWF ECW rivalry thing. Then he goes to the NWA, and he leads an invasion over there. And that was based on the old Crockett Promotions territory. And his stable had Jeff Jarrett, Barry Windham, and the Rock and Roll Express. Later that year, he starts to manage a new version of the Midnight Express that features Dan Severin. But then he steps back into management and goes back to the commentary table. Usually he's on Sunday Night Heat about this time. And then he just disappears from TV altogether. He comes back at WrestleMania 17. He participates in the gimmick battle royal they had that year. But he was very quickly eliminated by Hillbilly Jim. And that's going to close us out with the WWF.
He had a
Well,
memorable
sort of.
run there.
Sort of.
He had a memorable run, and his fingerprints were all over the product.
Jim says he's just incredible guy. I remember him.
So
Although
for reference, in the argument with Jim Dunn, Jim Cornette called him a Bugs Bunny looking motherfucker and then assaulted him. He did not attempt to. He did so, of which he was removed from the room and then summarily fired from the company.
You said that, you Bugs Bunny looking motherfucker.
And then went after his ass. Yes, let's just be very clear. Cornette did not say what you said. What he said, you Bugs Bunny looking motherfucker, and then went after his ass.
All right, thank you, John, for making sure our listeners and our viewers out there got the full scoop. I want to be 100% transparent, especially if it's a fact and it's out there.
Try to give y'all the clean version.
We deal with facts and not fiction on this show, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right.
If
I'm
Where are we going next?
Driving this bus right off a cliff.
Cannonball.
We are at Ohio Valley Wrestling. So
Yes.
WWE, they do own them. That's their developmental territory. So that's why I said sort of. During that time, they were
when he called him the what? What was it?
The Bugs Bunny looking motherfucker. Yeah.
Got it. When he called him that, instead of terming him, they sent him. Didn't send him. He said, "Let me go down to Smoky Mountain," because Danny Davis was running that school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Work on developing talent to come up to the roster. At this point, he gets the fuck out of Stanford. He goes home, and he's able to continue to contribute and not have to be around who, John?
That Bugs Bunny looking motherfucker, or the shit stain,
or shit stain. Exactly. That's a win. Right? Like that's heaven.
Well, so let's talk about some of the talents that he developed while he was down there. Kane, D'Lo Brown, Sonny, Al Snow, John Cena, Dave Bautista, Randy Orton, and Brock Lesnar. Now, how impressive is that list of names?
That's a who's who list of modern talent right there.
Mm-hmm.
Every era that he's been involved in, he's had a list of this kind of generational talent, and he's been 4 or 5 different 6 different generations now.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be. Oh, were you about to say something?
I was just gonna say it's continuing fingerprints on the business, in any form, and like you just read that list. That list is a Hall of Fame list, essentially. And whether he was hands-on with the training or helping with the promos, he was involved in some form or fashion with all of these guys, and was able to bestow what knowledge he has for the business. He clearly knew what he was doing as far as the tutelage aspect of it, because that proof is in the pudding.
Well, it wouldn't be Cornette if he didn't get in trouble.
Sure.
So in May of 2005, he got suspended because he slapped Anthony Corelli, also known as Santino Marella, because he no-sold the Boogeyman during a live event and laughed at him. So Cornette gets suspended, and then
Cornette was pissed
yeah,
about
another
that.
yeah.
Yeah. He was in the crowd. Boogeyman was in the ring. He was doing his worm spot, and Santino didn't act scared. He laughed at him and walked away. So Cornette slapped the taste out of his mouth.
Well, he comes back from suspension and has another incident, and then he gets fired. So
Yep.
that
There's
now
a long
closes his
string of
time
these,
out.
yeah.
So that closes his time out with WWF for real this time, which takes us to TNA. So let's summarize WWF before we move on.
Go ahead,
What are
John.
your thoughts?
I think that realistically, Cornette was very underutilized in the capacity that he could have been used because upper management had their own heads squarely up their own asses. This has been a consistent problem with WWE upper management that they have an agenda that may or may not work, and they don't care what other people think or want or do. They're only interested in pushing their singular agenda. Like, just that's all they want. They want to push their agenda, and that's it.
I mean, I think I've said what I needed to say. Like Cornette, to me, at this point in time, he was 22 in 84, right? So 32 and 94. This is what, 95, 96?
It's hard to
Right
tell with
there.
him because he's doing all
I
of these
mean,
things so simultaneously.
At this point, he's 34, 35 years old, guys.
And still has had 20 years in the business.
I think, if he really wanted to, he could probably go home, Castle Cornette, and not have to give no fucks about anything until Jeff Jarrett called.
That is true. That is very true. All right. Well, we are in 2006. We are in what was then called Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. He's a new face in management. He was the management director, according to those press releases. He premieres at Slammiversary, their pay-per-view in Orlando. He comes out, he gives a speech, he leaves, then he comes back at the end of the show because of the Orlando screw job, which had the NWA World Heavyweight Championship belt after Jeff Jarrett, Larry Zbyszko, and Earl Hebner execute a screw job on Christian Cage and Sting. Do either of you remember the Orlando screw job? I wasn't watching TNA back then, so I
I
don't.
don't remember the Orlando screw job. So at this point in time, I wasn't watching TNA, but it's kind of like I do with wrestling now. I don't really watch a lot of it to begin with, unless we're doing a watch along. But I will follow it on my sites that I take peeks at and see the results and what have you. And if there's something that sparks my interest, then I'll go out of my way to watch it. Right, like I didn't watch the premium live event this past weekend, but I did hear that the Sami Zayn Kevin Owens tag match with Reigns and Solo was worth watching, so I went back and watched it earlier this week. So I saw the spoilers for the TV tapings coming off of the pay-per-view. And it was like Jim Cornette's the new director of Authority, comes out and cuts a promo and sets this up and sets this up. So I went, well, shit, I'm gonna go ahead and watch that because I haven't seen him and I'm curious what's he gonna do and what's he gonna say. It's something that something that we glossed over, and we should at least just touch on real quick because it just hit me. His feud with Paulie Dangerously in WCW that led to that great fucking tuxedo match. So if you guys hadn't seen that, I know we just kind of glossed over it, the WCW stuff, but that just hit me in my head. So now, fast forward to TNA. I see the spoilers. I have to see what he had. What hear the reaction of the crowd. Like you can read spoilers all day and you can read results, but nothing gets you like the crowd reaction. If you're live and you're with a mic in hand, especially working a show. John can attest to that.
Mhm.
I wanted to hear what the reception was going to be like, and shockingly, it was positive, and he came across well in the promo, and I started watching it a little bit. After that, I didn't watch it every week, but I would catch it, more often than not, which was none to begin with, and it was just to see how this would play, and I really enjoyed his run in TNA until shit stain reared his ugly head again.
On that note, uh, Cornette, excuse me, Cornette, he didn't want to be another Vince McMahon. So when he would come out, uh, he would take no more than 10 minutes of the show because he had a quick tongue. And like I said, he didn't want to be another Vince McMahon. But he also had Matt Morgan, who was his on screen bodyguard because he didn't want harm to his physical well being. And he stayed there until he became a full time wrestler. Um, Cornette would also handle multiple situations at once, which led to the infamous company meeting where he had the entire roster come out to hear some decisions on some things that were going on in the company. And some of those issues, he forced the Latin American Exchange to start wrestling again, or they would be terminated. He booked Raven and Zabisco in a hair versus hair match. He disbanded Team Canada because they were always cheating. Um, he fired Earl Hebner after the Orlando screw job. Ebner did get rehired, but that was because he passed a lie detector test about on Jeff Jarrett. He booked America's Most Wanted and Gail Kim in a match against Sorelda, AJ Styles, and Christopher Daniels. That was an intergender match, but it also had Daniels' World NWA World Tag Team Championship was on the line. He booked the Fatal Four Way between Christian Cage, Sting, Scott Steiner, and Samoa Joe. Uh, and then he finally declared Jeff Jarrett the official NWA World Heavyweight Champion because Jarrett defended that in a Fatal Four Way. So he would bring people out. He would take 10 minutes, and that was some of the stuff that he did with TNA until he got his release in 2009. And as Chris said, that's because the creative team at that time was handled by who?
It was Garrett, Corney, Touch My Tail, Shit Stain.
There you go. All right. So that was his run in TNA. I think we kind of, I think you've already given your thoughts. Did any, based on what I just said, any more thoughts before we go to Ring of Honor?
I mean, besides the fact that he should probably just stay the fuck away from Shit Stain because it seems like everywhere that motherfucker is, he gets canned from. Or decides to part ways or has an altercation or there's some history with those two. And I think we've talked about this before. And I'm still going to bring it up. I wonder if it was a real work. If they actually go have beers together and they still believe in the kayfabe of it all.
Definitely not a work.
How do you know? Have you been in the room? You don't know.
No, I haven't been in the room, but I don't see it being a
I
situation.
told you, somebody is angry Spice tonight.
Call me Pepper Spice. It's fine.
Pepper Spice.
Sure.
Okay, I can do that.
Ring of Honor.
All right, so we're in 2009. We are with Ring of Honor, and he's an executive producer for this show. He comes in September. He's announced, and he immediately starts making waves with their champion at the time, Austin Aries, and forces him into a four-way title match. And he creates the Pick Six Contender Series. So once again, comes in and immediately, who is he paired with? Top guy of the company. This seems to be a reoccurring pattern here, and it seems to be
you
one
put your
that.
aces in your places.
Axe.
Mm-hmm. He's still doing that, but he's not content to just work in one place. No, he's not. He goes back to Ohio Valley Wrestling, and he's the head booker for the promotion. He's there for about a year. He leaves when they were working on an agreement with TNA. He then goes back to Ring of Honor. He announced that chair shots to the head are banned, and anyone who does so is going to get fined $5,000. Then he bans the pile driver in any form. So he's creating a bit of controversy on air.
Always.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be him if he didn't, right?
Yep.
Were you going to say something, Chris, or are you just adjusting your mic?
And he's agreeing.
Oh, I'm adjusting the mic.
Hey. Okay.
I was gonna say something dirty, but I think we've covered all that today.
I am innocent. I hope all of our viewers,
You are.
and I know everybody on Twitch knows how innocent I am, so I don't do things like that.
His nose is growing on live fucking screen.
Mm-mm.
All right. I was waiting on Pepper Spice to say something, but I'll keep going. All right. So about this time, Cornette is replaced in Ring of Honor as their head booker by Hunter Johnson, who is also a wrestler who was named Delirious. And then they wrote Cornette off of television, saying that he had injuries at the hands of Jay Lethal. But then it finally comes out that he had actually left the promotion. One, to not stay out of trouble, he gets released because he had an outburst at a television taping. And he had something to say about it. So they let him go. And that closes out his time for Ring of Honor. Any final thoughts on Ring of Honor?
Just it seems like he seems to get himself into these incidences a lot.
He is his own worst enemy.
It definitely didn't last too long, if memory serves. You know, it was what it was, and you know, when you think that there's no more wrestling for Cornette to fucking appear at, we get the NWA.
I don't know what to say there. I mean,
He circles back around to the NWA, does color commentary there for 13 episodes maybe, and gets canned there for a comment made on the air, and you know, just it's. I don't know if that ends it for him. Truth be told, but if you really sit back and think about it for a second, can you really think of one other person? And there may be. I don't think that list is going to be really long. Can you name one other person that traveled to every territory in some form or fashion, drew money, that started his own company, that worked for WCW and the WWF and TNA Wrestling, And, oh, by the way, the NWA. The only place that made an appearance in ECW. You see where I'm going with this? Every fucking promotion in some form or fashion, Jim Cornette has been a part of.
Mm-hmm. And not
Whether
just
it be
been
a
a part
one night
of, but
thing,
like has made impacts everywhere he's been.
whether it be one night, whether it be a long term thing, training talent. I mean, I really think that this cat is for some of the things that he says. You know, we don't. Well, I'm not condoning some of his comments. I'm looking at his ring work and his work in the industry, not his extracurricular work or what he says about people outside of the industry. That's his personal life, and he's entitled to say whatever the hell he wants to say. He's human. He answers to himself in the business. Can you think of anyone else that just like may have worked everywhere at least once?
Well, hello, Justin York. Better late than never. We see you in the chat.
See, no
So
kid has made an appearance.
that's what happens when you show up late. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm not. I'm just messing with you, Justin. You know that.
You're actually right on time, Mr. York, because we're going to have this little badass watch along here in just a second. So hang tight.
So I mean, really, his career is winding down at this point. He has a year-long stint in What Culture Pro Wrestling. He goes back to the WWE for a year, where he inducts the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Express into the Hall of Fame. He
Oh,
goes
another
back to
glass of
Impact.
wine, dear.
It is not the wine. I just got tongue-tied.
I'm sure that's what they all say.
He goes back to
Right,
Impact
it's
Wrestling.
it's that milkshake. It's I don't know what to tell you. It's that milkshake got you tongue tied.
Well, it definitely brings people to the yard.
Old milk.
Nope. Nope. Um, he goes back to Impact Wrestling for just a very brief stint there. He does go back to the NWA. He's there. He's on commentary for a while. Made some controversial statements. Gets released right after that, and then his last stint is Major League Wrestling. He does some commentary there until he retired. Um, and now he has his own podcast that's pretty popular, and that's Jim Cornette.
He has
What are your
two
thoughts?
podcasts. Well,
Two.
he's got the drive through and he's got the experience and he's still out here doing his thing. I figure though, before we get
Jim
into
Cornette
final
shouldn't
thoughts
be
on
allowed to
Cornette,
do any more things in a drive-through.
well,
I was
after
kind of
that first,
thinking.
after we started the show, man, I'm telling you. Why don't we pop on this little quick watch along real quick, and then we'll circle around with final thoughts. We'll wrap the show up. We have got a really good surprise for next week's spotlight that I'm going to let Toddy let you guys in on when we get ready to wrap up. So just hang tight for just a few minutes. Back in the day, Smoky Mountain Wrestling was a thing, and when we do these spotlights, we do like to pick out a match to take a peek at and see, just whatever, see what it is. I've never seen this match, but I remember from Smoky Mountain Wrestling, there was an angle that was really, really hot for that territory. Arn Anderson shows up underneath a sheet to team with the Rock and Roll Express, take on the Heavenly Bodies and Bobby Eaton. A six-man tag. Corney's on the floor, uh, racket in hand, banana yellow fucking sport coat. It's not a terribly long watch. We're looking at about 11 minutes or so. So do you guys want to do this and then we'll tie a bow on this?
All right, well, let's kick over this other screen and then we'll get things going here. Bam, bam, bam. All right, guys, this is Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Heavenly Bodies and Bobby Eaton versus the Rock and Roll Express and Arn Anderson. We're going to get things rolling in 3, 2, 1.
That has worked together for quite some
Did I show
time,
you
even
the
though
shirt?
Bobby
Did
Eaton
you
is
guys
like a
see my
Johnny
shirt
come
that I'm
lately to
sporting?
the combination
Does,
of Pritchard and Lane. But still, he has been with Jimmy Cornette for a long time, so they know exactly almost what's expected out of the team. Arn Anderson, on the other hand, of course, is
like
in
that.
there with the rock and roll.
That is
They
a
have different
bright
styles.
yellow
They
fucking
probably have
coat,
different
too,
strategies
boy.
and different philosophies. Seeing
Oh, we're rocking
as
and
well
rolling.
that. And I'm
I
going to
think
see what
Tom
you're
is
going to see
already
right
laying
now.
in on
We're going to see
fucking
how this
Morton.
team, the Rock and Roll Express and Arn Anderson,
We
they
all
work
kind of
together.
finally, this one Paige found for sure, but we've all come up with something for the show at some point. We dig into wrestling all over the place.
And Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane
I contribute
both
nothing.
off the apron.
You just
Tom Pritchard
missed
in the
the
center of the
fucking
ring taking a
Hurricane Rana
shellacking.
from Morton.
Now there is a cord of dissension running against the Heavenly
And
Bodies.
folks, this match is brought to us tonight by Pro Wrestling Roots. Make sure you check them out if you like what you see.
A little dissent there between Stan
I fucking
Lane
forgot to
and
play it.
Bobby Eaton.
Well, I think it's
Give
more
me
of
a timestamp, bud.
right now. I think it's
I'm
this is what I
at
pick up in the dressing room. I think it's
104,
more some dissension
105,
between Tom
106.
Pritchard and Bobby Eaton. And I think Stan, now Stan, he tries to calm it down, but Stan Lane sometimes he likes to stir it up.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting at.
He likes to stir it up behind Cornette's back.
Yep.
That's
19,
just what I'm
20,
picking up in the
21.
dressing room.
Well, regardless of what's happening in the dressing room right
Goes for
here,
big lariat.
it's,
Oh,
Dr.
misses
Tom
that leap.
Pritchard going against
Oh, head to the
Robert
nuts. Did you
Gibson,
see that?
and it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty even
Wait a minute
matches
now.
where he goes.
Now here comes the enforcer, Arn Anderson.
Yeah,
The
that
first
botch
time he's
probably
been in
will
a-
not go over
in
well.
this match. And Bobby Eaton is taking a shellacking just in the corner. He's not even stepped officially into the ring yet, but has already been nailed twice completely off the apron.
We got our hands
Tom
on
Pritchard,
it.
Arn Anderson go collar and elbow,
And I also
Pritchard
try and
takes a
find
shot
stuff
at Arn
that the
Anderson.
YouTube police don't show
What a
us.
shot by Pritchard, but Arn Anderson, it didn't phase him.
Matches like this. I know
Arn is
it's
begging for another one.
Wait a
Goes for
minute.
a double
Yeah.
leg. Yokes him right out to the corner. Ugh.
That'll put you out of commission right quick. To
Drives
run your
that
leg
knee
into
right
the
into the
ring
post.
Like that, and he goes for a second
Goes
time.
for another one.
Well, let me say this right now while we're watching Tom Pritchard over there with a hurt leg,
Arn Anderson
courtesy
was
of
one
Arn
of my
Anderson. See,
all-time fucking
Cornette made a
favorites,
statement
man.
earlier, the toughest 3 men in the world right now. They have
Arn's a tough
I don't have
son
to
of a
disagree with
bitch.
him.
He's
I think
scary,
the most
dude.
dangerous 3-man combination in wrestling today, of
Yes.
course, is the stud stable with Jimmy Golden, Robert Fuller, and myself. Now, they're not here today, and that's why I'm sitting up high, because these men, none of these men then are like me. So that's why I'm up here. Now we see Bobby Eaton down for the 3rd time in the corner with Stan Lane along with him.
Yes,
Tom
man,
Pritchard
hell, I
in
hear
the
on the
wrong
call.
corner looking for that tag.
I believe
As we
so.
have pointed out, we had Pritchard's leg right into the corner post, and Arn Anderson goes for the
Arn goes for the figure 4 right in the
He
middle of the
goes for
ring.
figure
Gets
four.
cut off.
Wait,
Or,
they're
no.
all for the figure 4s.
What the hell? That's the...
Figure 4.
That's a
Locked
figure
in the
12
ring
in the
now.
middle of the
The
ring.
referee's going to have to break this up. We do have a disqualification rule in this one.
Going to work on that weakest part of the chain of
Cornette
heavenly
doing his
bodies.
thing.
That is Tom Pritchard.
Now, here's the bad blood. Now, look at these hammering shots Bobby Eaton's putting on Arn Anderson. He knows that Arn is
Oh,
after him, so
turn
he's
the
going
other
to
way
take the
around.
battle to him right now, and he's got Arn hammered down in the corner. The turnbuckle and a charge. Oh!
Get a
Bobby
crowd
misses
there.
it.
Like, this is
Bobby
like a
Eaton misses
Southern wrestling
takes
crowd.
that buckle.
Well, in that case, it was the best offense and the best
And there you
defense.
see that
The
racket
best
in
defense
Cornette's
won
hand
out.
that we
Very
talked
good,
about
very
earlier.
good, Phil. You catch it.
Yeah,
on
he's
this
never
commentary.
far away from
I'm
that
learning,
thing.
I'm learning from you.
I don't know. Wait a minute. DDT by Arn Anderson on Stan Lane. A punch and another one
Oof.
on Tom Pritchard. And now
And those, man, those DDTs from Arn back in the day are no joke either.
So what we've seen in the last 30 seconds, a triple figure 4.
Oh.
And now Cornette's in the
Uh-oh.
ring. Oh, look.
Oh, shit.
Oh.
And that's something Stan Lane and Tom Pritchard don't want to see.
Oh.
Their manager manhandled by Arn Anderson.
Cut
Well, he
off.
almost got Cornette. We
Yeah, no,
see
exactly,
Arn
Jim.
Anderson
The
praying,
pace of
like,
this match is
"Thank you.
insane.
Thank you, spiritual one, for delivering me Jim Cornette almost on a platter, but he waited a little too long, and they got to
They're
him.
not
He didn't
wasting
get
a
the
lot of
DDT
time.
on Cornette.
No, they're not.
Well, I mean, they got this many people in the ring to get through, and they got a story to tell. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Apparently
Gibson
fans are
outside
throwing
the
things
ring,
at
two
the
big
wrestlers.
shots
Oh.
by that tennis racket. He is down. Bobby Eaton attending
I
to
mean,
him
it's
now.
the
Back
Cornette
in the ring.
effect.
Now Stan Lane's, he intercepts him, takes him in. The clothesline, Robert Gibson down.
See you, Lexi.
Giving a little word of advice there, like, boy, you're messing with the heavily bodies. Now I'm gonna have to give both these teams their due. They're
Beautiful
tough teams. They're big and rough, but I don't think they're rougher and tougher and better than the stud stable. Well, I'll tell you right now, see, if you take all the titles these men and the stud stable have held collectively, it's more than any other like 9-man combination probably in the history of wrestling.
Well,
Tom
I hate to
looks
interrupt
like
you,
the
but let's talk a little bit
renegade.
about what's happening in the ring. We'll
You
get to
guys
your stud
remember
stable a little bit
that?
later on, okay?
Oh, well.
Yeah, well, I think the Renegade looks like him,
They're
really.
like the forgotten entity here.
right,
Everybody wants to
right.
forget the stud stable, but they are well and they're alive right here in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. But I will do what you said. I will take
Big
it
back
back
body
to
drop.
the ring right now. Robert Gibson on the receiving end.
They're
Some
absolutely, since the
punishing,
brouhaha went down, they're
punishing
absolutely taking control of the match for
delivered
sure.
by the heavenly bodies.
yeah.
Now Bobby Eaton got Robert Gibson. This bad blood between the Rock and Roll Express
Brian Hildebrand,
and
referee.
the heavenly bodies,
Okay,
or
Mark
whoever
Curtis,
Cornette would
rest in
have at that
peace.
particular time, maybe the Midnight Express or whatever. It goes back to 1984, started in the old Mid-South territory down there, and in Louisiana,
That's
Oklahoma,
definitely
New Orleans,
Derek
Jackson, Mississippi.
Goes for
But
the
that's
roll
where
up,
it
but gets
started, and it's
that
continuing
clap
to
from
this
the
day.
thighs.
Now,
Oh,
tag to the
hot
fifth.
tag.
Ricky Martin in the ring. Stan
Just
Lane
laying
down,
everybody
Tom Pritchard
low
up,
right
Bobby Eaton getting
here.
hammered
Gets
again in
all
the
three
corner.
of them in there too.
Now Tom Pritchard taking a ride,
Grant wanted to complain.
and he misjudged. He went for the
Yeah,
shoulder
you're
block in
right.
the corner.
Getting out of harm's way was Dr. Tom Pritchard.
Well, he's not.
Oh,
he
there's
knows,
the
he's not
racket.
stupid.
I'm eating against
Oh,
Ricky
yeah.
Morton, and right now with that.
So are you discounting my theory on Tom Pritchard, which is not a theory?
No, I just don't want to be. In for a possible lawsuit, a libel, defamation of character type of suit there.
Do you know Tom Pritchard? It can't be a defamation of
Jim
character if
called
you know
you
it.
out.
I'm not going to get into that. Tom has all the right
He
in the
was
world to
mistaken.
sue
He
you
was
and me
mistaken.
for
There was no
defaming his
yawning.
character if he
That's the
chooses to do
second
so.
time
you
I've
have a
seen it,
standard
though.
thing.
I don't
I'm
think
not
he
going to be a
was.
part of this
I just didn't
conversation
call
right
you
now.
out
In the
the
ring,
first
it's
time. Now
Ricky
the
Morton.
cat's out of the bag.
You are a
Oh,
part of this conversation.
big
Now you see
clothesline.
Ricky Morton trying to be the hot shot he thinks
was
he is.
nice.
Getting his
Yeah, Morton was coming with a head of
Severed
steam, and he
by
ran
Bobby
right
Eaton.
through his
Now,
ass.
getting back to our conversation, you're not going to get sued. You
Nope.
haven't said anything. You're just merely a party to what I said.
That's not a head
I
of
also
steam,
have a
Jesus
pre-law
Christ.
background too, so you are free.
You
and
also
clear,
said right
okay?
through his.
I
Never
would
mind.
hope to think so.
Wait a minute. Ricky Morton on the outside. The playpen wouldn't hold him.
There's that
Now,
wholesome
the table
image,
back up. We
right?
saw this a little earlier.
But you're innocent.
I am very
Rammed
old.
into the
I
announcer's
did
table.
not.
Now,
I
like we
didn't
said
say it,
before,
John.
this
You
match
finished
is
But
that.
you caught it,
anything
so.
might happen into it because these men, there's a
John
lot
said
of
it. I
bad
didn't
blood
say it.
here.
I was just
It's-
repeating.
it's
what I
expected
heard.
from me.
This is
It's
not
expected
a
from me.
scientific wrestling match in any stretch
Exactly,
of the
not
imagination. It's
for
pure
me.
chaos.
That's why I didn't
Well,
say
that's
it.
what it should be because see, these men are not. They're not exhibiting.
They're all just
wrestling
squaring
art.
off outside.
It's
They're
more
like,
a-
come
a
on,
street
get some
fight.
then.
See, they're all outside
Cornette
the
streaking
ring.
through the
Not
ring.
One man is in the ring except for Bobby Eaton, but he is watching. He is watching from a distance. But
Cornette used a tennis racket on Ricky Morton, and
good.
All
he's
that
got the table up
clusterfuck
there
is
now.
Cornette got a
Cornette
racket
is a
shot in.
devious type of person.
You're right.
Well, no, he's really a smart man. But see,
He is an
Well, let
opportunistic
me say
man
this. He is
at
smarter
best.
than the Rock and Roll Express and Arn Anderson, but he's not smarter than the stud stable.
Eaton
He's
just
smarter
choking
than
the
the average
shit out
Smoky
of
Mountain
him.
Bear is what you're trying to say.
Well, he is smarter than the average Smoky Mountain fan, too.
Snap,
I'll say
man.
that.
Thought he was going to go for a pin, but didn't. Hits Arn in the fucking head, like out of nowhere, to get the ref figured out. Now they've got a 3-on-1 going on.
Ricky Morton and Robert is cut off at the pass on the other side. Anderson is still on the outside.
Well, the referee Mark Curtis trying to keep some control in the ring, but you got 7 guys.
But now they're paired up
counting
again.
Cornette, and it's hard.
Everything's
You
back
can't-
to normal.
He doesn't have eyes in the back of his
Coming out
head.
of the corner.
So right now, Mark Curtis is sort of happy because
bar.
at least the action is where he can watch it. The other men are neutralized in the corner, and now he's just watching in the center of the ring what's going on. Back kick by Ricky Morton. He sends Tom Pritchard for the ride. Reversed by Pritchard. Out of
Oof.
power slam by the Doctor Pritchard.
That was a fast move
Referee
into the
Mark
corner
Curtis
there.
1-2. Didn't quite get him.
An illegal move.
Well, whoa, a big
Morton
kick
sees
by,
it coming.
A big kick by Ricky Morton. Sort of stunned Stan Lane. He goes to the corner. He tags Bobby Eaton.
Go for it. Here comes Arn.
Now we got a tag.
Oh, shit.
Closer in the ring. The big left hands. Arn Anderson Anderson left.
Yeah, the last person Eaton wanted to see in that ring was Arn.
That's the one he wanted to get in this match, and he's after Eaton on the outside now.
Oh, hell is breaking
Well,
loose.
two legal men are Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton, and they're getting back into the ring. And we've got Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson and Tom Pritchard and Stan Lano doing battle
nice.
too.
Hell of a swing, neck breaker.
Move of Bobby Eaton, the spinning neck breaker performed on Arn Anderson. Now here we go. Alabama Jam.
He's way out there.
Top rope. He hits him with it.
One,
See if he hit him right.
Nope.
No, a save made by Robert Gibson. Now we almost
Runs
got three
right
separate
into
matches
Eaton,
going on
too.
Right now, Jim Cornette up on the edge of the ring.
Cornette tosses that tennis
Oh.
racket over to Bobby Eaton. Look at there.
Well, he's got the racket. Oh! He
Damn.
hits Tom Pritchard with it, and Arn Anderson grabs it. And a shot by Anderson.
Oh, we've got a cover here. 1, 2, 3.
And that'll be it.
And it's the rock and roll.
Yeah, you don't survive that shot.
Well, let's say this. It must have been Rock and Roll's day because Arn Anderson and Rock and Roll Express took the measure over the heavenly bodies.
Well, what a match that was.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't too shabby. Clearly, it wasn't the full drawn-out deal. I think it was kind of a clip match, but excuse me, served the purpose just to get a little peek of some old school Smoky Mountain Wrestling. So, give me your closing thoughts on Jim Cornette and his what you feel like his legacy is on the business.
You should
And
do
I'll
Toddy.
give mine, and then Toddy,
You should
can
do
give yours, and
You should do Toddy first, and then you, and then I'll close this out.
well, I'll go first. Toddy goes second, so he can announce the show next week.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so my thoughts are this: with Jim Cornette, arguably, this guy has a mind for professional wrestling, and what professional wrestling, truthfully and at its core, is. He understands the entertainment aspect of it. People that he had the opportunity to work alongside for decades. It's a Hall of Fame who's who list, and I forgot MLW, that small stint there, but legit, the guy hit every promotion, and I truthfully cannot think of another talent off the top of my head that has done that and has found success just about everywhere. I think that he has a place in the Hall of Fame, and it's kind of a shame that he's not there now. Same can be said with the Midnight Express. But arguably, with all the trials and tribulations, the ups and the downs, the contributions to the industry are irrefutable. Period. His fingerprints through the individuals that he trained through Ohio Valley are still being felt today. So here's to Jim Cornette. I think that he took the game of being a manager and enhanced it. Because at this point in time, you had some manager figures out there with the Grand Wizard and Jimmy Hart and Bobby Heenan, and there was Gary Hart. There's a slew of managers that were there, but Cornette to me he's on the Mount Rushmore as far as manager talents are concerned, in my opinion. So, Toddy, your thoughts, and then tell us what we got going on next week, because I'm super stoked about it.
I know. It's really hard to follow up what you said because I really have no disagreement with anything that you said. He definitely is still felt in this business today. His ideas were original. He always aligned himself with the right people at the right time. But he also had the business acumen when he wasn't getting fired to leave when it was time to leave. And that's something that a lot of people don't have. They will continue to run something into the ground, but he knew when it was time to leave and he would leave. And for the most part, he left on his own terms. But even when he didn't leave on his own terms, you can't take away the contributions that he brought to each of those companies. And the list is extensive. Starts at 14 and he's in this business, and then he's gone all the way to 2019 until he retires. So he was in this business for a very long time and made a lot of money, and he should have made a lot of money because of the stuff that he did. So I was happy to do the spotlight, but I'm more excited about what we're going to do next week because we are going to spotlight an unsung hero, in my opinion, someone who brings a lot of contributions to the table. And I'll never forget a quote that she had in an interview where, if I'm doing my job right, I can go out there and wrestle a broom and make it look like the greatest professional wrestling match you've ever seen. And that's saying something. We are talking about the one and only Luna Vachon. I'm very excited to do this. I'm very excited to present this, not just because it's a woman wrestler, but I don't think that she gets the flowers that she deserves for her contributions to this business. So I'm super excited. I'm ready.
Well, guys, you heard it here first. Next week on Spotlight, we are doing Luna Vachon. I'm excited about that myself. I'm just finding out about it. I didn't know anything about it. It's a shock to me, just like it's a shock to you guys. But I'm here for it, 100%. And if you want to be here for it, don't forget to go down below, hit those hearts, follow the page, take all the links over to the YouTube, follow the page over there, click the Discords down below so that you can get behind the curtain with us and show us matches and wrestlers that you would love to see us do, maybe expose us to some new stuff. And guys, it has been, as always, a tremendous pleasure to share our passion with you. We love each and every one of your faces. And we will see you again right here on Monday at 7 p.m. when we have a tag team throwdown. You guys pick the winners on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard right here on Twitch. We'll see you again next time.
Good night.